I'm standing at the top of my mother's basement stairs, my hand frozen on the doorknob, my heart hammering so hard I'm sure they can hear it down there. I've just crept through the back door of the house where I grew up, the house I've visited every single day for the past 4 years. And now I'm listening to my sister's voice drift up from below, low and urgent. "Just sign here, Mom. It's paperwork for the house. You want to make sure we're all taken care of, right? Margaret doesn't need to know about this. She'll only worry." My sister Linda, my baby sister who I protected on the playground, whose wedding I helped plan, whose kids I babysat for years. She's down there with our 89-year-old mother, and something in her tone makes my blood run cold. I hear my mother's voice next, thin and confused. "But I thought Margaret handles all my papers. Where is Margaret? Is she coming today?" "Mom, Margaret is busy. She can't always be here." That's Dan's voice, Linda's husband. What is he doing in my mother's basement on a Tuesday morning? "We're here to help you. We love you." I descend 3 more stairs, moving so slowly I barely breathe. Through the gap in the railing, I can see them now. My mother is sitting at the old card table we used for family game nights when Linda and I were kids, looking small and frail in her pink cardigan. Linda is on one side of her, holding her hand. No, not holding it, guiding it, moving it across a document. Dan is standing by the small basement window with his phone out, glancing up toward the ceiling like he's keeping watch. My mother's hand shakes as Linda moves it across the paper. "I don't understand what this is for," Mom says, her voice breaking. "Can we wait for Margaret?" "Mom, you're fine. You don't need Margaret for everything. Just sign." That's when I see the stack of papers on the table. Legal-sized documents, multiple pages, and a business card sitting on top, some lawyer's name I've never heard of. Something inside me shatters, not breaks, shatters. Like glass hitting concrete, 1,000 pieces flying in directions I can't track. This is my sister, my mother, my family. And I'm watching something I can't quite name yet. Something that feels like betrayal wearing the mask of concern. I must make a sound, a gasp, a sob, I don't know, because Dan's head snaps up. His eyes meet mine through the railing. His face goes white. "Margaret," he says, and the guilt in his voice confirms every terrible instinct I've been feeling for weeks. Linda's head whips around. "Oh my God, what are you doing here?" "What am I doing here? I'm supposed to be at my book club. I canceled at the last minute because something, call it intuition, call it God, call it a daughter's 6th sense, told me I needed to check on Mom this morning." "The question," I say, my voice shaking as I walk down the rest of those stairs, is what are you doing here? Have you ever walked in on something that changed everything you thought you knew about the people you love? That moment when your whole world shifts and nothing will ever be the same again. That was my moment. Standing in that basement, looking at my sister's face, seeing the guilt and anger flash across it. But to understand what happened next, to understand how I got to this breaking point, I need to take you back to where this all began. My name is Margaret Eleanor Hayes. I'm 68 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I understood my family. I thought I knew what loyalty meant, what sisterhood meant, what family meant. I was wrong about all of it. Let me take you back to 6 months ago, when everything still made sense. I retired from teaching elementary school 4 years ago, the same year my husband Robert passed away from pancreatic cancer. It was the hardest year of my life, watching the man I'd loved for 43 years fade away, then suddenly finding myself alone in a house that felt too quiet, too empty. But I had my routines. I had my book club, my garden, my volunteer work at the library, and most importantly, I had my mother, Rose Catherine Hayes. 89 years old, sharp as a tack, still living independently in the 4-bedroom colonial where she'd raised Linda and me. That house held every memory of my childhood, the kitchen where Mom taught me to bake, the living room where we watched The Price is Right together, the backyard where Dad built us a swing set that's probably still standing today. Mom's house was only 20 minutes from mine, and I visited her every single day. Every single day. I'd bring her groceries from Trader Joe's. She loved their dark chocolate peanut butter cups, and take her to her doctor's appointments. We'd sit at her kitchen table doing crossword puzzles, and she'd beat me every time. She was my best friend. Linda, my younger sister, lived about 40 minutes away with her husband Dan. They had 2 grown kids who'd moved to California and Oregon, barely called, barely visited. Linda and I had always been different. I was the responsible oldest child, the rule follower, the one who became a teacher and married her college sweetheart. Linda was the free spirit, the one who dropped out of college to backpack through Europe, who'd had 3 different careers by the time she was 40, who married Dan when she was 36 after swearing she'd never settle down. But she was my sister. We talked on the phone every week. We spent Thanksgiving and Christmas together. 3 years ago, when Dan lost his job at the marketing firm, I even loaned them $5,000 to help with their mortgage. They never paid it back, but I didn't push it. Family doesn't keep score, right? That's what I believed then. About 6 months ago, I started noticing small changes in Mom. Nothing alarming at first. She'd forget which day of the week it was, or she'd ask me the same question twice in one conversation. Her doctor, Dr. Patricia Chen, said it was normal age-related memory changes. "We'll monitor it," she told me, "but Rose is doing remarkably well for 89. Then, about 3 months ago, Mom started mentioning Linda more often during our visits. "Linda came by today," she'd say, smiling. "She brought me lunch from that Italian place. Wasn't that sweet?" At first, I was genuinely happy. Linda was finally stepping up, being more involved. God knows I'd been carrying the load of Mom's care for years while Linda lived her life. Maybe she was maturing, I thought. Maybe she was realizing Mom wouldn't be around forever. But then the comments got stranger. "Linda helped me with some paperwork today," Mom mentioned one Tuesday afternoon. We were sitting at her kitchen table, and she seemed distracted, nervous even. "What kind of paperwork?" I asked. "Oh, I'm not sure. Something about the house, I think. Or taxes." She said it was routine. My mother had been handling her own finances since she was 18 years old. She'd worked as a bank teller before having kids, then managed the books for my father's construction business for 30 years. She balanced her checkbook to the penny. She didn't need help with routine paperwork. "Did you sign anything, Mom?" She looked at me with this confused expression that made my chest tight. "I don't know. Maybe?" Linda said I did, but I can't remember where I put my copy. I searched the house that day. Nothing. But when I was taking out her trash, I found something. Torn pieces of letterhead from a law firm I didn't recognize. Morrison and Associates, estate planning attorneys. I called Linda immediately. "Hey, were you at Mom's today?" "Oh yeah, just stopped by to check on her." "Why?" She mentioned something about paperwork. "About the house?" There was a pause on the other end. Then Linda laughed, but it sounded forced. "Oh, that. It was nothing, Marg. Just some information about property tax exemptions for seniors. I picked up a pamphlet at town hall and showed it to her. You know how she likes to stay informed." Mom said she signed something. Margaret. Linda's voice took on that edge I'd heard 1,000 times growing up, the tone that meant I was being the annoying big sister again. She didn't sign anything. You know how confused she's getting lately. She probably saw me writing notes and thought she was signing something. That's when it started. The seed of doubt Linda planted. Was Mom getting more confused? Was I being overprotective? Linda made it sound so reasonable, so innocent, and I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe my sister wouldn't lie to me. But I started paying closer attention. The following week, I arrived at Mom's house at a different time than usual, mid-morning instead of afternoon. Dan's truck was pulling out of the driveway just as I turned onto the street. I waved, but he didn't wave back, just drove past like he hadn't seen me. When I got inside, Mom was sitting in her living room, looking upset. Everything okay, Mom? Oh, Margaret. She grabbed my hand. I'm getting so forgetful. Dan was just here, and he said I'd asked him to look at something in the basement, but I don't remember asking him. Did I tell you I needed something fixed? No, Mom. You didn't mention anything. I must be losing my mind. You're not losing your mind. I sat down next to her, but my stomach was churning. What was Dan doing in the basement? I don't know. Something with the furnace, maybe? Or the electrical box? He said Linda had asked him to check on things. I went down to the basement. The furnace was fine. The electrical box was fine. Everything was exactly as it should be. But Mom's filing cabinet, the one where she kept important documents, insurance papers, her will, the lock looked scratched, like someone had tried to open it. Over the next 2 weeks, I started showing up at random times: Tuesday morning, Thursday evening, Saturday afternoon. And almost every time there were signs that Linda or Dan had been there. A coffee cup in the sink that wasn't Mom's style. The smell of Dan's cologne lingering in the hallway. Once, I found a legal pad on the kitchen counter with notes in Linda's handwriting. POA, financial, trust, irrevocable, beneficiary change. When I asked Mom about these visits, she'd get nervous. Linda said I shouldn't mention it, she whispered once. She said it would only worry you and you have enough to deal with. Mom, I'm not worried, but why would Linda tell you not to tell me things? I don't know, honey. Maybe I misunderstood. I'm getting everything mixed up these days. But she wasn't mixed up. Someone was mixing her up on purpose. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago. My phone rang at 2 a.m. Mom's name on the screen. My heart stopped. Margaret, I need you. Her voice was shaking, crying. I threw on clothes and drove to her house in 8 minutes, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard they ached. When I got there, every light in the house was on. Mom was sitting in her living room in her nightgown, mascara streaked down her face from crying. Mom, what happened? There were people here today, she said, her voice breaking. Going through things, through your father's desk, through my papers. I told them to stop, but they said it was okay, that I'd given them permission. Did I give them permission, Margaret? I can't remember anymore. My hands went cold. What people, Mom? Linda and Dan, and another man. A lawyer, maybe? He had a briefcase. They were in my bedroom, in my office, opening drawers. The man kept asking me questions about the house, about my accounts. I got confused and scared, so I went to lie down. When I woke up, they were gone, but things were moved. Papers were missing. I held my 89-year-old mother while she sobbed, this woman who'd been my rock my entire life, who'd raised 2 daughters and buried a husband and never once complained. Now she was fragile and afraid in her own home. What's happening to me, Margaret? Am I going crazy? No, Mom, you're not going crazy. My voice was steady, but inside, something was hardening into steel. Someone is trying to make you think you are. That night, after I got Mom calmed down and sleeping, I sat in my car in her driveway and made a decision. I was going to find out exactly what Linda and Dan were doing. I was going to catch them, and I was going to stop them. The next morning, I set my trap. I called Linda and told her I was going to my book club Tuesday morning, something I did every week like clockwork. Then I told Mom I'd visit her Tuesday afternoon instead. Tuesday morning, I parked my car 3 blocks away and walked back to Mom's street. I waited across the road, hidden behind my neighbor's hedge. At 9:30, Dan's truck pulled up. Then Linda's car, then a silver Lexus I didn't recognize. I waited 5 minutes. Then I used my key and let myself in through the back door, the one that opens into the laundry room and doesn't make a sound. I could hear voices coming from inside the house. I followed them, to the basement stairs, where I stood listening to my sister manipulate our mother into signing away her home. The basement went silent when I reached the bottom of those stairs. 4 sets of eyes stared at me, Linda's wide with shock, Dan's calculating and cold, Mom's confused and frightened, and the strangers. A man in his 50s wearing a cheap gray suit, briefcase open on the table next to a stack of documents I couldn't quite see from where I stood. Margaret. Linda found her voice first, and I watched something remarkable happen. In less than 2 seconds, her expression shifted from guilty panic to defensive indignation. You scared us half to death. What are you doing here? I thought you had book club. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was actually trying to turn this around on me. What am I doing here? I stayed at the bottom of the stairs, blocking the only exit. This is my mother's house. I'm here every single day. The question is, what are you doing here? What are those papers? The man in the suit stood up, extending his hand like we were at some normal business meeting. Robert Mitchell. I'm an estate planning attorney. Your sister Linda retained my services to help your mother with some important legal matters. I ignored his hand. My mother already has an attorney, Bernard Kaufman. He's handled her affairs for 20 years. Yes, well. Robert Mitchell glanced at Linda, and I caught it, that look of coordination between co-conspirators. Your sister felt that a fresh perspective might be beneficial given your mother's changing needs. Her changing needs? I looked directly at my mother, who sat hunched at that card table, looking like a frightened child. Mom, did you ask for a new lawyer? I don't know, dear. Her voice was so small. Linda said a lot of things, apparently. I moved closer to the table, trying to see the documents. Dan shifted his body to block my view. That's when I knew for certain. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was coordinated, deliberate. Margaret, you need to calm down. Dan's voice had that patronizing tone that made my blood pressure spike. We're trying to help Mom. You're not the only one who cares about her, you know. Help her how, Dan? By sneaking over here when you think I won't be around? By bringing a lawyer I've never heard of into her basement? By getting her to sign documents without her primary caregiver present? Primary caregiver? Linda's voice rose, sharp and defensive. God, Margaret, listen to yourself. You act like you own Mom. Like you're the only one who gets a say in her life. Like the rest of us don't exist. I'm the one with medical power of attorney, Linda. I'm the one Mom chose to make healthcare decisions if she can't. Medical. Linda practically spat the word. Not financial, not property. Mom is still capable of making her own decisions about her house, about her money, about her assets. Right, Mom? My mother looked between us, tears starting to form in her rheumy eyes. I don't want you girls fighting. Please don't fight. We're not fighting, Mom. Linda's voice went soft and sweet as honey. She put her arm around Mom's shoulders in what would have looked like a loving gesture if I hadn't just seen her forcing Mom's hand across a legal document. Margaret just gets anxious sometimes. She worries too much. She means well. She's just a little... She paused, searching for the word. Controlling. There it was. The narrative Linda was building. Margaret, the control freak. Margaret, the overbearing daughter who won't let Mom make her own choices. I could see exactly where this was going. What's on those papers? I addressed Robert Mitchell directly, ignoring Linda's manipulation attempt. He exchanged another glance with Linda. I'm not at liberty to discuss my client's legal affairs without her explicit consent. Your client? I gestured at my mother. That woman is confused. She called me at 2 a.m. last week, not even remembering who'd been in her house. You think that's someone capable of making major legal decisions right now? Mrs. Hayes, Mitchell addressed my mother in that slow, loud voice people use with children and the elderly. Do you want to tell your daughter Margaret about our planning, or would you prefer to discuss this privately, with your family first? It was a beautifully constructed trap. If Mom said yes, it gave legitimacy to whatever scheme they were running. If she said no, it made me look like the aggressive outsider being shut out of family business. Mom looked overwhelmed, lost. Can Margaret stay? I want Margaret here. Of course Margaret can stay. Linda's smile was tight. We have nothing to hide. Right, Dan? Dan just grunted, still standing between me and those documents like a guard dog. I pulled up a folding chair and sat down right next to my mother, taking her cold, trembling hand in mine. "I'm here, Mom. I'm not going anywhere." For the next 20 minutes, Robert Mitchell laid out what he called an estate protection plan. I listened to every word, my anger building with each sentence. The plan involved transferring Mom's house, the house she and my father had paid off 30 years ago, into something called an irrevocable trust to protect it from Medicaid estate recovery. Except Mom had long-term care insurance. She wasn't on Medicaid. She'd never needed Medicaid. The plan also involved establishing a durable power of attorney for finances, with Linda as the agent. Not me, the daughter who'd been managing Mom's bill payments and bank reconciliation for the past 2 years. Linda, who'd never balanced a checkbook in her life, and the final piece, restructuring Mom's savings, all $850,000 of it, into protected investment accounts that would be managed by Dan, who'd apparently gotten some kind of investment advisor certification online. Dan, who'd lost 3 jobs in 5 years, who I'd loaned money to that he never repaid, who drove a truck that was about to be repossessed, according to the notice I'd seen sticking out of his glove compartment last Thanksgiving. "This is insane," I said when Mitchell finished. "Mom doesn't need any of this. Her affairs are in perfect order. She has a will, she has beneficiaries on her accounts, she has insurance. What problem are you actually solving here?" "The problem," Linda said, leaning forward, "is that Mom's assets aren't protected. If she needs nursing home care, Medicaid will take everything. The house, the savings, all of it. We're making sure that doesn't happen. Linda, Mom has a long-term care policy that pays $300,000. That would cover years of care if she ever needed it. Policies have limits, Margaret. Exclusions. What if it's not enough? Then we deal with it then. Why are we making major legal changes to protect against something that might never happen?" "Because we love her." Linda's voice broke on the last word, a performance worthy of an Oscar. "Because we don't want to see her lose everything she and Dad worked for. Because, unlike you, we're thinking about her legacy, about making sure her grandchildren have something to remember her by." Her grandchildren. Linda's kids who called maybe twice a year. This wasn't about protecting Mom. This was about protecting an inheritance. "How much?" I asked quietly. "What?" Linda blinked. "How much does this estate planning cost? What's Mr. Mitchell's fee?" Mitchell cleared his throat. "My retainer for this type of comprehensive planning is $3,000. "And who paid that retainer?" Silence. Finally, Dan spoke up. "I did. Linda and I paid it. As a gift to Rose, to help her. You paid $3,000 to hire a lawyer to restructure my mother's estate." I looked at Dan. "You, who told me last Christmas you couldn't afford to buy gifts for your own kids this year. Where did you get $3,000, Dan?" His face went red. "That's none of your business." "Everything involving my mother is my business." "Girls, please." Mom was crying now, soft, helpless tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. "Please stop yelling." I took a breath and lowered my voice. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm not yelling at you, but I need everyone else to leave now." "You can't throw us out," Dan said, stepping forward. "This isn't your house, Margaret." "No, but I have medical power of attorney, and I'm exercising it right now. I'm declaring that my mother is under emotional distress and is not in a state to make legal decisions today. Mr. Mitchell, if you value your law license, you'll pack up those documents and leave. If anything gets signed today without an independent capacity evaluation, I will personally report you to the State Bar Association for elder exploitation." Mitchell's face went pale. He'd been in this game long enough to know I wasn't bluffing. Exploitation of the elderly was a career-ending accusation. "Perhaps we should reconvene another time when everyone is calmer and we can have a more productive conversation." "There won't be another time," I said. "Not without Mom's actual attorney present. Not without a full capacity evaluation from her doctor, not without complete transparency about who's paying you and why. Linda grabbed her purse, her face twisted with rage. "You're going to regret this, Margaret. When Mom ends up in some state nursing home and loses everything because you were too stubborn and controlling to let us protect her, remember this moment. Remember that we tried to help. The only thing I'm going to remember is that my own sister tried to steal our mother's house." "How dare you?" Linda's voice was shaking. "How dare you accuse me of stealing? I'm trying to save this family. You're tearing it apart. I'm not the one who came here in secret. I'm not the one coaching Mom on what not to tell me. I'm not the one forging ahead with legal changes behind everyone's back." Dan put his hand on Linda's arm. "Come on. We're done here. Let Margaret have her little power trip. We'll see what a judge has to say about this." They left. All three of them. Mitchell practically ran up the basement stairs. Linda wouldn't even look at Mom as she walked out. And Dan turned at the top of the stairs and gave me a look of pure hatred. When the back door slammed, the house went quiet, except for my mother's soft crying. I held her while she sobbed, this woman who'd held me through skinned knees and broken hearts and my husband's funeral. "Did I do something wrong?" she kept asking. "Are Linda and I in a fight now? Is this my fault?" "No, Mom. You didn't do anything wrong. I promise. This isn't your fault." "But Linda's so angry. I've never seen her like that. What if she doesn't come back? What if I've lost my baby girl?" I wanted to tell her that Linda had already been lost long before today, that the daughter she remembered, the free-spirited, loving girl, had been replaced by someone I barely recognized, someone capable of exploiting her own mother for money. But I couldn't say that. Not yet. So instead, I just held her and said, "Everything's going to be okay. I'm going to make sure you're safe." After Mom calmed down, after I made her chamomile tea and got her settled in her favorite chair with the TV on, I went back down to that basement. The documents were gone. Mitchell had grabbed them on his way out, but I found something they'd missed. A pamphlet, Morrison and Associates, estate planning attorneys. On the back, someone had scribbled notes in handwriting I recognized as Dan's. RIFI value, $600K. Time frame, 6 weeks. Bobby's cut, 30%. Refinance. They were planning to take out a loan against Mom's house, a house that had been paid off for 3 decades. And Bobby's cut, Robert Mitchell. He wasn't just their lawyer. He was their partner. He had a financial stake in this scheme. My hands were shaking as I took a photo of that pamphlet with my phone. Then I sat down on the basement stairs, those same stairs where I'd stood listening to their betrayal. And I made a plan. I needed evidence. Real, irrefutable evidence. Because this wasn't over. Linda's parting words, "We'll see what a judge has to say." That was a threat. She wasn't backing down. She was regrouping. And if this was going to end up in court, I needed to be prepared. That afternoon, after Mom took her nap, I drove to Best Buy. I bought a small security camera, the kind advertised for monitoring pets or checking on elderly relatives. It had motion activation, audio recording, and cloud storage. Completely legal to install in your own home with the owner's consent. "Mom," I said gently when she woke up, "I want to set up a camera in the kitchen, just to make sure you're safe. If anything happens, if anyone comes by and you feel uncomfortable, you can press this button and I'll be able to see and hear everything immediately." She was still shaken from the morning's confrontation. Will it keep Linda away? The question broke my heart. "It'll keep you safe, Mom. That's all that matters." She agreed. I installed it that evening, angled to capture the kitchen table, but also showing the hallway to the basement door and the back entrance. I downloaded the app, set up motion alerts, and tested it 3 times to make sure the audio was clear. Then I called Bernard Kaufman, Mom's actual attorney, the one who'd helped her write her will, who'd handled Dad's estate, who'd known our family for 20 years. Bernard, it's Margaret Hayes, Rose's daughter. I need your help. Something very bad is happening. We talked for over an hour. I told him everything, the suspicious visits, the secret lawyer, the documents I'd interrupted, the refinance scheme. He was appalled. Margaret, what you're describing is textbook elder financial exploitation. The fact that it's your own sister doing it doesn't make it less serious. If anything, it makes it worse, because Rose is less likely to believe she's being victimized. What do I do? Document everything. Every visit, every conversation, every document you find. And I need you to get your mother evaluated by a geriatric psychiatrist. Not just her regular doctor, a specialist who can do a formal capacity assessment. We need that on record. Linda will fight me on that. Let her. If Rose truly has capacity and truly wants to change her estate plan, she can do it through proper legal channels with proper safeguards. But if her capacity is compromised, or if she's being unduly influenced, we need that documented before Linda causes irreparable harm. The next morning, I called Dr. Patricia Chen. I need you to do a full cognitive evaluation on my mother. I think she's being financially exploited. Dr. Chen didn't hesitate. Bring her in tomorrow. I've actually been concerned myself. Rose has seemed more anxious in recent months, more uncertain. I thought it was normal aging, but if there's external manipulation happening, that changes everything. For 2 days, Linda didn't call, didn't text, didn't visit. I almost thought I'd scared her off. Then my phone lit up with an alert from the security camera. It was 10:30 in the morning. I was at the grocery store in the middle of the produce section. The motion sensor had detected someone in Mom's kitchen. I opened the app with trembling hands. Dan was in my mother's house, alone. Going through the desk in her kitchen, the one where she kept her checkbook, her credit cards, her important papers. I watched in real time as he pulled out her bank statements, took photos of them with his phone, then carefully put them back. Then he opened another drawer and pulled out her checkbook. He flipped through it, photographing several pages. He thought no one was watching. He thought he was being clever. I saved the video to 3 different cloud locations. Then I called Mom. "Hi, sweetheart," she answered, her voice already sounding nervous. "Mom, is someone there with you?" A pause. Dan stopped by. "He's fixing something in the kitchen." "What's he fixing?" "I'm not sure. A loose drawer pull, I think. Linda asked him to take care of it." I was already in my car, abandoning my grocery cart. "Mom, I'm 5 minutes away. I'm coming over right now." When I walked in, Dan was sitting at the kitchen table with Mom, all smiles and charm. "Hey, Margaret, just helping your mom with some maintenance. Found a loose drawer pull, all fixed now." "Which drawer?" I asked. "The one by the sink." I'd used that drawer this morning when I made Mom breakfast. It was fine. There was nothing loose about it. "Thanks for stopping by, Dan. I can handle things from here." He stood up slowly, and I saw it. That look of calculation. He was trying to figure out how much I knew, what I'd seen, whether I was on to him. "Sure thing. Just trying to help out. You know, Linda and I worry about Rose being here all alone." "She's not alone. I'm here every day." "Right. Of course." He headed for the door, then paused. "You know, Margaret, Linda's really hurt by what happened yesterday. She was just trying to help Mom, and you treated her like some kind of criminal. Was she trying to help Mom, or was she trying to help herself?" His jaw tightened. "That's a hell of a thing to say about your own sister. It's a hell of a thing to go through someone's financial documents without their knowledge." His eyes widened just a fraction, enough to tell me he knew. He knew I'd seen something. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" I stepped closer. "Get out of my mother's house, Dan, and tell Linda that if either of you comes back without calling first, I'm getting a restraining order." He left, but not before I saw the fear flash across his face. That night, I sat in my own home reviewing the camera footage from the past 48 hours. At 2:47 in the morning the previous night, my camera had picked up audio. Voices from outside, near Mom's driveway. Dan's voice. He was on his phone, and he must have been sitting in his truck because the audio was muffled but clear enough. "Bobby, I'm telling you, the old lady's easy. Linda's got her convinced that Margaret is controlling everything, trying to cut Linda out. Another week, 2 tops, and we'll have the POA signed." "No, Margaret's suspicious, but she's got no legal standing. Once we have POA, we can start moving assets." "Yeah, I know I owe you. You'll get your money as soon as the refinance closes on the house. 600,000, 30% to you. That's what we agreed. I don't care if it takes 6 months to push through. You'll get paid." I played that recording 5 times, my hands shaking worse each time. This wasn't about helping Mom. This wasn't about protecting her assets or her legacy or anything Linda had claimed. Dan owed money, serious money, to Robert Mitchell, the lawyer they'd brought in, and they were planning to pay it off by refinancing my mother's house, a house she owned free and clear, a house that represented her only security. They were going to saddle my 89-year-old mother with a $600,000 debt to pay off Dan's gambling debts or failed investments or whatever hole he'd dug himself into. And Linda, my baby sister, the girl I'd protected my whole life, she was helping him do it. I sat there in my dark living room, laptop open, watching and listening to my family plot to destroy my mother's financial security, and something inside me went cold and hard as steel. This was war, and I wasn't going to lose. The next morning, I took Mom to Dr. Chen for her full cognitive evaluation. Linda called while we were in the waiting room, Mom's phone buzzing insistently in her purse. "Aren't you going to answer that?" Mom asked, reaching for her phone. "Let me check who it is first." I looked at the screen. Linda's name. 3rd call in 10 minutes. "It's Linda. I'll call her back after your appointment." "But what if something's wrong? What if she needs something?" "Mom, if it's an emergency, she'll leave a voicemail. Right now, we need to focus on your checkup." Linda didn't leave a voicemail. Instead, my phone started buzzing. I declined the call. 30 seconds later, a text. "Where are you with Mom? I stopped by her house and she's not there." I typed back, "Doctor's appointment." "What kind of appointment? What's wrong? Why didn't you tell me?" "Regular checkup with Dr. Chen." "We'll have her call you later." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "I want to be there. I'm her daughter too." "Appointment's almost over. Talk later." I silenced my phone. It kept buzzing in my purse. 5 more texts, 2 more calls. Linda was panicking, and I knew exactly why. She needed to know what Dr. Chen was going to say about Mom's capacity. Because if a doctor officially documented that Mom was cognitively sound, it would be harder for Linda to claim later that Mom didn't know what she was signing. And if the doctor documented cognitive decline, it would undermine any legal documents Linda tried to push through. Either way, Linda was losing control of the narrative. Dr. Chen's evaluation took almost 2 hours. She tested Mom's memory, her reasoning ability, her understanding of complex information, her capacity to appreciate consequences of decisions. She asked Mom to remember 3 words and recall them 5 minutes later. She asked her to explain what she'd do if she found a stamped envelope on the sidewalk. She asked her to count backward from 100 by 7s. Mom struggled with some of it, the counting backward especially. But she understood every question. She knew where she was, what day it was, who was president. She could explain the difference between a loan and a gift. She knew the value of her assets. When the testing was done, Dr. Chen sat us both down in her office. "Rose, I'm going to be very direct with you. Your cognitive function shows some age-related decline. That's completely normal for someone who's 89. Your short-term memory isn't quite as sharp as it was a few years ago, but you are still fully capable of understanding information and making informed decisions. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Mom nodded, relief flooding her face. "I'm not losing my mind." "You're absolutely not. But Margaret has shared some concerns with me about pressure you've been under. Has anyone been telling you that you can't make decisions? That you're too confused to handle your own affairs? Mom's eyes filled with tears. Linda said I was getting forgetful, that I needed help with things, that I might not remember conversations correctly. Rose, that's called gaslighting. It's when someone deliberately makes you doubt your own perceptions and memory. It's a form of psychological manipulation, and it's not okay. Dr. Chen looked at me, then back at Mom. Has anyone been pressuring you to sign legal documents? I think so. Linda and her husband brought a lawyer to my house. They wanted me to sign papers about my house, but I didn't understand what they were for. When I said I wanted to wait for Margaret, they got upset with me. Dr. Chen made notes on her computer. Then she printed out several pages and handed them to me. This is my formal assessment. Rose Catherine Hayes, 89 years old, demonstrates age-appropriate cognitive function with mild short-term memory impairment. She maintains full decisional capacity and shows no impairment that would prevent her from managing her own affairs with appropriate support. However, I'm noting observations of increased anxiety and fear responses, possibly resulting from external manipulation or coercion. She looked at me seriously. Margaret, what you're describing sounds like elder financial exploitation. I'm legally required to report suspected abuse to Adult Protective Services. I was planning to file a report myself, I said, but if you could document your medical observations, that would help. I'll file my report today. And Rose? Dr. Chen turned back to Mom. If anyone tries to pressure you into signing anything, you say no. You say you need to talk to your doctor and your lawyer first, and then you call Margaret immediately, okay? Mom nodded, squeezing my hand so hard it hurt. From Dr. Chen's office, I drove directly to the law firm of James Whitmore, elder law attorney. Bernard Kaufman had recommended him as the best in the state for elder abuse cases and a complete bulldog when it comes to protecting vulnerable seniors. James was in his mid-60s, silver-haired, with the kind of sharp, assessing eyes that probably terrified opposing counsel. I laid out everything for him: the timeline, the suspicious visits, the secret lawyer, the documents I'd interrupted in the basement, the camera footage of Dan going through Mom's papers, the audio recording of Dan's phone call about the refinance scheme and owing money to Bobby. He listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Hayes, what you're describing is textbook elder financial exploitation. The fact that it's being perpetrated by family members doesn't make it less criminal. It actually makes it worse because the victim has an emotional bond with the perpetrators that makes them less likely to report or resist. What can we do? Several things, and we need to move fast. First, we're filing for an emergency guardianship petition with you as the proposed guardian. This will temporarily freeze any major financial decisions regarding your mother's estate until a court hearing can be held. Linda will fight it. Let her. We have Dr. Chen's assessment. We have video evidence of unauthorized access to financial documents. We have audio of a conspiracy to fraudulently refinance your mother's property. Linda has what? Claims that she's trying to help? Claims that you're being controlling? He shook his head. We're on solid ground here. What else? Second, I'm reporting this to Adult Protective Services myself. That will supplement Dr. Chen's report and strengthen the case. Third, we're getting a forensic accountant to examine your mother's financial records. I want to know if any money has already been moved or if there have been any unauthorized transactions. How long will this take? The emergency petition? We can file today. A judge will review it within 48 hours. If granted, we'll have a temporary order in place that prevents anyone, including Linda, from making major changes to your mother's property or finances until a full hearing in about 30 days. What do I tell my mother? James's expression softened. The truth, that you're protecting her, that these are legal safeguards to make sure no one takes advantage of her, that she's not in trouble, she's being protected. We filed the emergency guardianship petition that afternoon. James submitted Dr. Chen's cognitive assessment, my written timeline of events, screenshots from the security camera footage, and a transcript of Dan's recorded phone conversation. I drove Mom home and sat her down for the hardest conversation I'd ever had with her. "Mom, I need to tell you what's going to happen over the next few days." She looked frightened. "Am I going to a nursing home?" "No, absolutely not. You're staying right here in your house. But I'm going to court to become your temporary legal guardian, just for a little while, so that no one can pressure you into signing legal documents or making financial changes without going through proper channels." "Even Linda?" I took her hands in mine, especially Linda. "Mom, I need you to understand something. Linda isn't trying to help you. She and Dan are trying to take out a huge loan against your house to pay off Dan's debts. They're using you." Mom started crying, these silent tears that rolled down her cheeks and dripped onto our joined hands. "Why would she do that? I'm her mother. I gave her everything." "I don't know, Mom. I've been asking myself the same question. Does she hate me that much?" "I don't think she hates you. I think she's desperate, and desperate people do terrible things. Dan has gotten them into some kind of financial trouble, and instead of dealing with it honestly, they decided to use your assets to solve their problems." "My baby girl," Mom's voice broke. "When did she stop being my baby girl?" I held her while she grieved, not for the money or the house, but for the daughter she thought she had, for the family she thought she could trust. 2 days later, I got a call from Adult Protective Services. A caseworker named Jennifer Torres wanted to interview Mom. I agreed immediately and cleared my schedule. Jennifer came to Mom's house that Thursday afternoon. She was in her 40s, professional and kind, with the demeanor of someone who'd seen every type of family dysfunction imaginable and wasn't easily shocked. She interviewed Mom privately first. I waited in the living room, listening to the murmur of voices from the kitchen, my stomach in knots. After 30 minutes, Jennifer came out and asked to speak with me. I showed her everything. The camera footage of Dan going through Mom's desk, the audio recording of his phone call, the pamphlet with the refinance notes, the screenshots of Linda's texts telling Mom not to mention things to me. Jennifer's expression got grimmer with each piece of evidence. "I'm opening a full investigation," she said. "Based on what I'm seeing and what your mother told me, there's substantial evidence of financial exploitation and psychological abuse. I'll be contacting your sister and brother-in-law for interviews as well. What if they refuse to cooperate? Then it looks very bad for them. Innocent people cooperate with APS investigations. People with something to hide lawyer up and refuse to talk." She closed her notebook. "Margaret, I want you to know, you did the right thing. Many people don't report family members, even when they know something's wrong. You may have saved your mother from losing everything." That night, Linda called me. She wasn't crying or pleading. She was screaming. "What the fuck did you do, Margaret? Adult Protective Services just called me. They're accusing me of abusing Mom. Are you out of your goddamn mind?" I kept my voice calm. "Linda, you were literally trying to steal Mom's house." "I was protecting her house. From Medicaid, from losing everything." "Jesus Christ, Margaret, when did you become so paranoid?" "I'm not paranoid. I have you on camera. I have Dan on audio. I have documentation of everything you've been doing." Silence on the other end. Then, quieter. "You've been spying on us?" "I installed a security camera in Mom's house, with her permission, to keep her safe. You and Dan just happened to incriminate yourselves on it." "You can't do this. I'm getting a lawyer. We're fighting your guardianship petition. We're going to prove that you're the one manipulating Mom, not us. That you've isolated her, made her paranoid, turned her against her own daughter." "Good luck with that, Linda. Because I have evidence. Real, documented, time-stamped evidence. What do you have? Lies?" She hung up on me. 3 hours later, my phone started exploding with calls and texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Cousin Diane. "I can't believe you're doing this to Linda. She's been nothing but good to Aunt Rose." Uncle Frank. "Your sister is heartbroken." You should be ashamed of yourself dragging family business into court. Aunt Carol, Linda told me what you're accusing her of. That poor girl. After everything she's done for your mother. Linda had launched a preemptive strike. She'd called every relative she could think of and spun a story. Margaret the control freak. Margaret the manipulator. Margaret who was trying to steal Mom's house by getting guardianship and cutting Linda out. Margaret who'd called APS with false accusations because she was jealous of Linda getting closer to Mom. She'd always been good at playing the victim. Even when we were kids, she could cry on command and convince our parents that I'd started whatever fight we were in. Now she was using those same skills on our entire extended family. But not everyone believed her. My cousin Robert, a police officer in the next county, called me that night. "Meggie, what the hell's going on? Linda's calling everyone saying you've lost your mind." I told him everything. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Send me the recordings, the camera footage, everything you've got." "Why?" "Because what they're doing isn't just unethical. It's criminal, attempted fraud, financial exploitation of an elderly person, possibly forgery if they've been signing her name to things. I can't investigate directly since it's outside my jurisdiction, and I'm family. But I know people in your county who specialize in elder abuse cases. If you've got what you say you've got, Margaret, they need to see it." "Linda will never forgive me." "Linda tried to steal your mother's house. Who cares if she forgives you?" He had a point. The emergency guardianship hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. James Whitmore called me Friday afternoon to prepare me. "The judge will want to see that you're acting in your mother's best interests, not your own financial interests. That you have evidence of exploitation, that your mother consents to this arrangement if she's capable of expressing a preference." "What about Linda? Will she be there?" "She hired an attorney, Marcus Webb. He's known for representing family members in contested guardianship cases. He'll argue that Rose doesn't need a guardian, that this is a family dispute being weaponized through the legal system, that you're overreacting." "How do we counter that?" "With evidence. The camera footage, the audio recordings, the APS investigation, Dr. Chen's assessment, and if needed, Rose's own testimony." "Will Mom have to testify?" "Possibly." "Is she strong enough for that?" I thought about my mother, 89 years old, betrayed by her own daughter, frightened and confused about how her family had fallen apart. "I don't know, but I'll prepare her just in case." That Friday evening, I got a call from James Whitmore's forensic accountant. Her name was Patricia Huang, and she'd been reviewing Mom's financial records for 3 days. "Ms. Hayes, I've found several irregularities in your mother's accounts." My stomach dropped. "What kind of irregularities?" 3 checks made out to cash over the past 4 months, totaling $15,000. The signatures don't match your mother's usual signature pattern. They're shakier, more uncertain, which suggests either significant decline in motor skills or someone guiding her hand. She hasn't had any decline in motor skills. Her handwriting is still steady when she writes her grocery lists. That's what I thought. There are also 2 wire transfers totaling $8,000 to an account owned by Daniel Crawford. The notation says loan, but there's no loan documentation, no promissory note, nothing. $23,000, already gone. Is there more? Yes. The most concerning item is an application for a home equity line of credit for $200,000 that was submitted to Mom's bank 3 weeks ago. It included a power of attorney document with your mother's signature. Did the bank approve it? No. They flagged it for verification because the POA document looked suspicious, different paper stock than what banks usually use, and the notary stamp was blurry. They called your mother directly to verify. She told them she hadn't applied for any loan and didn't know what they were talking about. So they denied the application and noted possible fraud in her file. $200,000. Not the $600,000 Dan had mentioned on his phone call, but still a staggering amount. They'd tried and failed. So they must have been regrouping, planning to try again with a different approach. That's what the basement meeting with Robert Mitchell had been about. Can you testify to all of this in court? Absolutely. I'll have a full written report ready by Monday morning. That weekend was surreal. Mom stayed at my house. I couldn't risk leaving her alone, not with Linda and Dan getting desperate. We watched old movies, did crossword puzzles, made cookies. I tried to keep things normal, light, comforting. But Mom was heartbroken. She barely ate. She'd start crying at random moments. I keep thinking about when Linda was little, she said Sunday night. We were sitting in my living room, the TV on, but neither of us watching it. She was 7 years old, and she got lost at the mall. She was terrified. When we found her, she was crying so hard she couldn't breathe. I held her for an hour, telling her she was safe, that I'd always protect her. What happened to that little girl, Margaret? I don't know, Mom. Did I fail her somehow? Did I not love her enough? You loved her perfectly. This isn't about you. This is about choices Linda made. But I wondered, too. How does someone go from being a daughter to being a predator? At what point did Linda look at our aging mother and see not a person who needed love and care, but an asset to be exploited? Monday morning, James called with the final piece of the puzzle. We subpoenaed Robert Mitchell, the lawyer Linda hired. He's agreed to testify in exchange for immunity from prosecution. He'll turn on them? In a heartbeat. Apparently, Dan owes him a substantial amount of money from a previous business deal that went bad. Mitchell was acting as both their attorney and their creditor. Massive conflict of interest. He's going to testify that Dan approached him with a scheme to access Rose's assets, and he went along with it because he wanted to get paid. So it's all going to come out. Everything. Everything. And Margaret? There's something else Mitchell told us. Your mother isn't the first elderly woman Dan has targeted. There are at least 2 other cases, friends of Linda's family, elderly widows, where Dan ingratiated himself, gained access to their finances, and helped himself to their money. Small amounts that the women didn't report because they were embarrassed or confused. I felt sick. This wasn't just desperate people making one terrible choice. This was a pattern, a system. Dan was systematically exploiting vulnerable elderly women, and Linda was helping him do it. Does Linda know about the other women? Mitchell says yes. She was the one who introduced Dan to them, who vouched for him, made them trust him. My sister wasn't just complicit. She was an active participant in a predatory scheme targeting the elderly. Tuesday morning arrived, the hearing. I dressed carefully, conservative, professional, the kind of outfit that said responsible daughter, not vindictive sister. Mom wore her best dress, the navy blue one with the pearl buttons. We walked into the courthouse together, James Whitmore on one side, me holding Mom's hand on the other. In the hallway outside the courtroom, I saw them, Linda and Dan, standing with their attorney Marcus Webb. Linda looked like she'd been crying for days, eyes swollen, face pale. When she saw Mom, she started toward us. Mom, please, you have to listen to me. Margaret's lying. We were just trying to help you. You know I love you, right? You know I'd never hurt you? Mom's hand tightened on mine. She looked at Linda, her baby girl, the daughter she'd rocked and raised and loved, and said quietly, "Then why did you tell me not to tell Margaret about your visits? If you were just trying to help, why did it have to be a secret?" Linda's face crumpled. Because Margaret's controlling. Because she doesn't want anyone else involved in your care. Because... Ms. Crawford. James Whitmore stepped between them. You need to step back. Now. I'm talking to my mother. You're harassing a vulnerable adult. Step back, or I'll ask security to remove you. Linda looked at me with pure hatred. This is all your fault. You've turned her against me. You've poisoned her. The court is ready, a bailiff announced from the doorway. The real battle was about to begin. Judge Patricia Morrison was exactly what you'd hope for in a family court judge, mid-50s, sharp-eyed, with an expression that said she'd seen every type of family dysfunction and wasn't impressed by any of it. She reviewed the emergency petition over her reading glasses, the courtroom silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and Mom's quiet breathing beside me. This court has reviewed the emergency guardianship petition filed by Margaret Hayes on behalf of her mother, Rose Catherine Hayes, age 89. These are serious allegations: financial exploitation, psychological manipulation, attempted fraud. She looked up at both sides of the courtroom. I've reviewed the preliminary evidence submitted. Mr. Webb, your client Linda Crawford opposes this guardianship. On what grounds? Marcus Webb stood, all polished confidence in his expensive suit. Your Honor, this is a textbook case of sibling rivalry being weaponized through the legal system. Rose Hayes is a competent, capable woman who does not need a guardian. She has age-appropriate memory changes, but she is fully capable of managing her own affairs and maintaining relationships with both her daughters. What we have here is Margaret Hayes, who has had primary caretaking responsibilities for years, refusing to share that role with her sister. She's using the guardianship process to maintain exclusive control over her mother. I felt my jaw clench. He was good. He made it sound so reasonable. Your Honor, James stood, and his voice cut through the courtroom like a knife. The evidence tells a very different story. We have video documentation of unauthorized access to financial documents. We have audio recordings of conspiracy to commit fraud. We have forged signatures on financial instruments. We have testimony from medical professionals about psychological manipulation. This isn't sibling rivalry. This is criminal elder abuse, and Ms. Crawford is trying to use family dynamics to obscure that fact. Judge Morrison nodded slowly. I'd like to hear from Rose Hayes directly. Mrs. Hayes, can you come forward, please? Mom squeezed my hand so hard I thought my bones might crack. Then she stood, and I helped her to the witness stand. She looked so small up there, so vulnerable. The bailiff swore her in, and her voice trembled, saying, I do. Mrs. Hayes, Judge Morrison spoke gently, do you understand why you're here today? Yes, Your Honor. My daughter Margaret is trying to protect me. Protect you from what? Mom's voice broke. From my other daughter, from Linda. She and her husband Dan have been coming to my house, trying to get me to sign papers. I didn't understand what the papers were for. They told me not to tell Margaret. They said Margaret would be upset, that I was just confused and couldn't remember things right. Did you ask them to help you with your finances? No, ma'am. I have a lawyer, Mr. Kaufman. He's helped me for 20 years. I didn't ask for a new lawyer. I didn't ask to change anything about my house or my money. Did you apply for a loan against your house? No. Mom's voice got stronger. Never. My husband Robert and I paid off that house 30 years ago. It's my security. Why would I borrow money against it? Mrs. Hayes, do you want Margaret to be your guardian? Mom looked right at the judge, tears streaming down her face but her voice steady. Margaret has taken care of me every single day since my husband died 4 years ago. Every single day. She brings me groceries, takes me to doctors, sits with me when I'm lonely, makes sure I take my pills. She's the one I trust. She's the one who keeps me safe. So yes, Your Honor, I want Margaret to be my guardian, because I'm scared of what Linda and Dan will do if she's not. I saw Linda flinch at those words. Dan's face went red. Your Honor, Marcus Webb stood. With all due respect, Rose Hayes just demonstrated perfect cognition and clear preferences. She doesn't need a guardian. What she needs is family mediation to resolve this dispute, not a court order that strips her of her autonomy. Mr. Whitmore? Judge Morrison looked at James. Your evidence? What happened next was methodical and devastating. James presented our case piece by piece, like a prosecutor building toward a guilty verdict. First, the video footage of Dan going through Mom's desk. The judge watched it on a laptop, her expression getting darker with each second. Then, the audio recording of Dan's phone call. His voice filled the courtroom. Bobby, I'm telling you, the old lady's easy. Another week, 2 tops, and we'll have the POA signed. You'll get your money as soon as the refinance closes on the house. Linda put her head in her hands. Dan stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. Then, Dr. Chen's written assessment and testimony. James read key passages aloud. Patient shows signs of psychological manipulation and gaslighting. Increased anxiety and fear, responses inconsistent with her baseline personality. While cognitively capable, she is being subjected to undue influence by family members seeking financial gain. Then, the forensic accountant's report. Patricia Huang testified via video link, her voice calm and professional as she detailed the $15,000 in suspicious checks, the $8,000 in wire transfers to Dan, and the attempted $200,000 loan application with a forged power of attorney. The bank flagged it as possible fraud, she said. When they called Mrs. Hayes to verify, she had no knowledge of the application. If they hadn't caught it, her home would now have a $200,000 lien against it. Finally, James called Robert Mitchell to the stand. The lawyer who Linda had hired looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. He'd been granted immunity in exchange for his testimony, but that didn't make this any less humiliating. Mr. Mitchell, James began, who first contacted you about Rose Hayes? Daniel Crawford. And what did Mr. Crawford tell you he wanted to accomplish? Mitchell shifted in his seat. He said his mother-in-law needed estate planning. He wanted to transfer her house into his wife's name, establish a power of attorney for his wife, and restructure the savings accounts. Did he say why? He said... Mitchell paused. He said the old lady didn't have much time left and they needed to protect the assets before she ended up in a nursing home. Did Mr. Crawford mention that Rose had another daughter who was her primary caregiver? No. He told me Linda was an only child. A murmur went through the courtroom. Linda had lied to her own attorney, erasing my entire existence from the story. Mr. Mitchell, did you receive payment for your services? Yes, a $3,000 retainer. From whom? Daniel Crawford. Did Rose Hayes ever pay you directly? No. Did you ever meet with Mrs. Hayes alone, without Linda or Daniel present? No. They were always there. Did you independently verify Mrs. Hayes's mental capacity? Mitchell looked down. No. I relied on the family's representation that she was capable but needed help managing things. One more question, Mr. Mitchell. You told investigators that Rose Hayes isn't the first elderly woman Daniel Crawford has targeted. Can you elaborate? Dan's attorney jumped up. Objection. Relevance. Your Honor, James said calmly. This goes to pattern of behavior and intent. It demonstrates that this is not a one-time family misunderstanding, but a systematic scheme of exploitation. Judge Morrison nodded. I'll allow it. Mr. Mitchell, please answer. Mitchell took a breath. Over the past 2 years, Daniel Crawford has referred 3 other elderly women to me for estate planning. All widows. All with substantial assets. All where he'd gained their trust through family connections or social relationships. In each case, the planning involved transferring assets in ways that would benefit Mr. Crawford or his associates financially. Did Linda Crawford know about these other cases? Yes. She was present at several meetings. She vouched for Dan, told the women he was trustworthy, helped facilitate the relationships. The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. Order. But I couldn't hear anything over the roaring in my ears. Linda hadn't just helped Dan exploit our mother. She'd been helping him target and exploit other elderly women. Multiple victims. A pattern. A scheme. This was who my sister had become. Judge Morrison called for a 15-minute recess. In the hallway, Mom sat on a bench, crying quietly. James stood guard, making sure Linda didn't approach. But Linda didn't try to approach. She stood at the other end of the hall with Dan, the two of them having a vicious, whispered argument. I could see her pointing at him, see him grabbing her arm, see the fear flash across her face. How long had she been afraid of him? How much of this had been Dan manipulating Linda the same way they'd manipulated Mom? But then I remembered the recordings. Linda's voice guiding Mom's hand. Linda telling Mom not to mention things to me. Linda vouching for Dan with other elderly victims. No, she wasn't a victim. She was a willing participant. When court resumed, Judge Morrison had clearly made her decision. I've heard enough testimony for today. Here is my ruling on the emergency petition. Margaret Hayes is appointed temporary guardian of the person and estate of Rose Catherine Hayes, effective immediately. This guardianship will remain in place pending a full investigation by Adult Protective Services and potential criminal charges. Linda made a sound like a wounded animal. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, I am ordering Linda Crawford and Daniel Crawford to cease all contact with Rose Hayes pending the outcome of the APS investigation. No visits, no phone calls, no texts, no emails. Any violation will result in contempt charges. Your Honor, please! Linda was on her feet, tears streaming down her face. She's my mother. You can't keep me from my mother. Ms. Crawford, you and your husband attempted to fraudulently obtain a $200,000 loan against your mother's home. You systematically isolated and manipulated a vulnerable elderly woman. You participated in what appears to be a pattern of elder exploitation involving multiple victims. You're lucky I'm not ordering your arrest right now. Judge Morrison turned to me. Ms. Hayes, you have full authority to make financial and medical decisions for your mother. You'll submit monthly accountings to the court. A full hearing is scheduled for 6 weeks from today, at which point we'll determine whether permanent guardianship is necessary or if other arrangements can be made. She banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. It was over. We'd won. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. Mom and I walked out of that courthouse together, James Whitmore beside us. Behind us, I could hear Linda sobbing, begging Dan to do something, fix this, make it right. In the parking lot, Mom turned to look back at the courthouse. She's going to hate me forever, she said quietly. She did this to herself, Mom. She's still my daughter. She's still my baby girl. I put my arm around her. I know, Mom. I know. But as we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw Linda standing on the courthouse steps, watching us leave, her face twisted with rage and grief. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Have you ever won a battle but knew the war was just beginning? That's exactly where I was. Because while the court had ruled in our favor, I knew my sister, and I knew she wasn't going to just accept defeat. The real consequences, the criminal charges, the full scope of Dan's schemes, the complete unraveling of my family, that was all still coming. The week after the hearing felt like living in the eye of a hurricane. Everything was quiet, still, but I could feel the destruction circling around us, waiting to crash down. Mom moved in with me temporarily. She couldn't bear to be in her house alone, not after everything that had happened. Every night she'd wake up crying, asking the same questions. Where did I go wrong? How did I raise a daughter who could do this? I didn't have answers for her. I was asking myself the same questions. Linda violated the no-contact order on day 3. I found a letter in my mailbox, no stamp, hand-delivered. Her handwriting on the envelope. Mom saw it and reached for it. Let me read it, please. Mom, the judge said, I don't care what the judge said. She's my daughter. Let me read what she has to say. I watched Mom's face as she read, watched hope flicker and die in her eyes. When she finished, she handed it to me silently. The letter was 7 pages long. Part apology, part justification, part accusation. Linda claimed she'd been trying to help, that Dan had convinced her Mom's assets were at risk, that she'd trusted him when she shouldn't have. But then, in the same letter, she blamed me for tearing the family apart, for turning Mom against her, for being controlling and vindictive. The final line, when you're old and alone and realize what you've lost, remember that you did this, not me. You. I called James Whitmore. She violated the no-contact order. Do you want to file contempt charges? I looked at Mom, who sat at my kitchen table staring at nothing. Not yet, but I want it documented. Photograph the letter and envelope. Save everything. If she contacts Rose again, we're going to the judge. 2 weeks after the hearing, Adult Protective Services completed their investigation. Jennifer Torres called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Margaret, we're substantiating the case. We have enough evidence to refer this to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. My hands went numb. Criminal charges? Elder financial exploitation is a felony in this state. With the amounts involved and the evidence you've provided, the forged documents, the attempted fraud, the pattern of targeting multiple victims, the DA is definitely going to want to pursue this. What does that mean for Linda? If charged and convicted, she's looking at potential prison time. 2 to 5 years for financial exploitation of an elderly person. Dan's looking at even more if they can prove he was the ringleader. Prison. My baby sister in prison. Margaret, I know this is your family, but what they did, what they were planning to do, it's not a civil matter. It's criminal. They targeted vulnerable elderly women, including your own mother, for financial gain. That's not a family dispute. It's a crime. I knew she was right, but knowing it and accepting it were two different things. The DA's office reached out 3 days later. Assistant District Attorney Rebecca Santos wanted to meet with Mom and me. She was in her early 40s with the kind of calm competence that probably made criminals nervous in court. Mrs. Hayes, Margaret, thank you for coming in. I've reviewed all the evidence APS provided, and I've consulted with the Financial Crimes Unit. We believe we have sufficient evidence to charge both Linda Crawford and Daniel Crawford with multiple felonies. She laid out the charges: elder financial exploitation, attempted fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft. For Daniel Crawford specifically, we're also looking at charges related to the other elderly victims Mr. Mitchell identified. We've contacted those women, and 2 of them are willing to testify that Dan gained access to their finances through fraudulent means and took substantial amounts of money. How much? I asked. Combined, over $70,000. Most of it was never reported because the victims were embarrassed or didn't understand what had happened to them. $70,000. Plus the $23,000 taken from Mom. Nearly $100,000 stolen from elderly women. What do you need from us? I asked. Rose's testimony, your testimony, the recordings, the documents, everything you've already provided, and I need to know, are you both willing to go through with this? Because once we file charges, there's no going back. This will go to trial. You'll have to testify. Your family will be in the media. Linda will likely paint herself as the victim, and you as the villain. Are you prepared for that? I looked at Mom. She looked so old in that moment, so tired, but her voice was steady when she spoke. My daughter tried to steal my home. She helped her husband steal from other mothers, other grandmothers. If I don't do this, they'll just do it to someone else. So yes, I'm willing to go through with it. Rebecca Santos nodded. Then we'll be filing charges next week. I drove Mom home in silence. When we pulled into my driveway, she said quietly, "Your father would be so ashamed." Of Linda, yes. Of all of it. Of what our family became. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Linda at 7 years old, lost in the mall, crying for Mom. Linda at 16, getting her driver's license, so proud and excited. Linda at her wedding, beautiful in white lace, promising to love Dan forever. When had forever become a conspiracy to commit fraud? The charges were filed on a Friday morning. By Friday afternoon, it was all over the news. Local woman charged with elderly exploitation of own mother. Mother and daughter accused of targeting vulnerable seniors in fraud scheme. My phone exploded. Reporters calling, relatives calling. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions about my family's destruction. Cousin Diane left a voicemail. I hope you're happy, Margaret. You've destroyed Linda's life. Over what? A misunderstanding? You're vindictive and cruel. But Aunt Susan called too. I'm proud of you, honey. I know this is killing you, but you did the right thing. The family was fractured beyond repair. Some people believed Linda's version, that she was trying to help and I'd overreacted. Others saw the evidence and knew the truth. There was no middle ground anymore. Linda's bail was set at $50,000. Dan's was set at $100,000. They couldn't make bail immediately, so they spent the weekend in county jail. By Monday, someone had posted their bail. I found out later it was Linda's daughter, my niece Emily, who'd taken out a loan against her own car to get her mother out. Linda called Emily's phone that night, knowing I'd blocked her number. Emily, 27 years old and crying, called me. Aunt Margaret, please, Mom's falling apart. She swears she didn't know how bad it was, that Dan manipulated her too. Can you talk to her? Can you help? Emily, your mother helped your father steal from your grandmother and at least 2 other elderly women. She wasn't manipulated, she participated. But she's my mom, and Grandma's her mom. How can you send your own sister to prison? I'm not sending her anywhere. Her choices did that. Emily hung up on me. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, James Whitmore helped me sort through Mom's finances and undo the damage. We reversed the wire transfers to Dan. The bank flagged them as fraudulent and recovered the $8,000. The $15,000 in cash checks was gone, untraceable. We changed all of Mom's bank account numbers, changed her passwords, updated her will to explicitly state that Linda was receiving only the minimum required by law, with the rest going to me and various charities. Mom, are you sure? I asked when Bernard Kaufman presented the new will. This is your daughter. This is a woman who tried to steal my home. Mom's voice was firm. She made her choice. Now I'm making mine. 6 weeks crawled by. Mom started seeing a therapist to deal with the grief and betrayal. I went too. Family therapy, they called it, though our family was basically destroyed. The preliminary hearing arrived on a cold Tuesday in November. The courthouse was packed. Media, relatives taking sides, curious onlookers who'd read about the case. Linda looked awful. She'd lost at least 20 pounds, her face gaunt and aged. When she saw Mom, she started crying. Mom, please, I'm so sorry. Please don't do this. Mom looked away. The hearing took all day. The prosecution presented their evidence, all the recordings, videos, documents, testimony from the other victims. Dan's lawyer tried to argue that it was all a misunderstanding, that Dan had permission to access the accounts, that the elderly women were confused about what they'd agreed to. It didn't work. The judge found sufficient evidence to proceed to trial and set a court date for February. As we left the courthouse, a reporter shoved a microphone in Mom's face. Mrs. Hayes, how does it feel to send your own daughter to prison? Mom stopped, looked directly at the camera, and said in a voice stronger than I'd heard in months, my daughter sent herself to prison when she decided stealing was easier than working, when she decided vulnerable elderly women were resources to exploit instead of people to protect. I didn't do this to her. She did it to herself. The clip went viral. By that night, it had 3 million views. The comments were split, half praising Mom's strength, half calling her heartless. I stopped reading comments after the first 100. Christmas came and went. Mom and I spent it alone, the first Christmas without Linda in 64 years. We tried to make it festive, bought a tree, made cookies, watched Christmas movies, but the empty chair at the table was deafening. The trial was set for February 15th, Valentine's Day weekend. How fitting for a case about family betrayal. ADA Rebecca Santos prepared us thoroughly. She walked Mom through her testimony 3 times, preparing her for the defense's cross-examination, warning her that they'd try to paint her as confused or vindictive. They're going to suggest that Margaret manipulated you into filing charges. They're going to say you're not really a victim, that this was just a family disagreement. Can you handle that? Mom nodded. I can handle the truth. And the truth is that my daughter tried to steal my home. The trial lasted 4 days. I'm not going to lie to you, it was brutal. Sitting in that courtroom, listening to every detail of the conspiracy, watching Linda cry on the witness stand, hearing her claim she'd been trying to help, that she didn't understand what Dan was doing, that she loved Mom and would never hurt her. The defense painted her as a naive wife, manipulated by a controlling husband. They painted me as the real villain, the controlling older sister who'd always been jealous of Linda, who'd seized on this situation to eliminate her competition for Mom's affection and inheritance. Dan's defense was different. He claimed Mom had given him permission to manage her finances, that everything was above board, that this was a civil matter at worst, not criminal. But then the prosecution played the recording. Dan's voice filled the courtroom. "The old lady's easy. We'll have the POA signed. You'll get your money as soon as the refinance closes." There was no explaining that away. The other victims testified, 2 elderly widows in their 80s who'd trusted Dan because Linda had vouched for him, who'd signed documents they didn't understand, who'd lost their savings. One of them, a woman named Dorothy, looked directly at Linda on the stand and said, "You told me I could trust your husband. You sat in my kitchen and drank my tea and called me Aunt Dorothy. And the whole time, you were helping him rob me." Linda sobbed through the entire testimony. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the courtroom was silent. Guilty. On all counts. Both of them. Linda collapsed, had to be held up by her lawyer. Dan sat stone-faced, staring straight ahead. Sentencing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. In those 3 weeks, Linda sent one more letter, shorter this time. It said simply, "I hope you can live with what you've done. I'll never forgive you. Never." I didn't show that one to Mom. The sentencing hearing was quick. The judge had clearly already made his decision. Dan got 7 years in state prison. With his prior record, turns out he had previous fraud convictions I'd never known about. The judge showed no mercy. Linda got 3 years, with possibility of parole after 18 months. The judge acknowledged that she appeared to have been influenced by her husband, but noted that she'd had multiple opportunities to stop, to come clean, to protect her mother instead of exploiting her. "You betrayed not only your mother, but other vulnerable elderly women in your community," the judge said. "You used your position of trust as a daughter and friend to facilitate theft. That betrayal warrants serious consequences." When the bailiffs led them away in handcuffs, Linda turned and looked at Mom one last time. Mom's face was wet with tears, but she didn't look away. After they were gone, after the courtroom emptied, Mom and I sat there for a long moment in silence. "I thought I'd feel better," Mom finally said. "I thought justice would feel like relief, but I just feel empty." "I know, Mom, I know. She's still my daughter, even after everything. She's still my baby girl, and she's going to prison, and I can't fix it. You didn't break it, Mom. You didn't break her. She made her own choices. But I raised her. Somewhere along the way, I must have done something wrong. I took her hand. You raised her with love and values and everything you had. What she chose to do with that, that's on her, not you." We left the courthouse that day and drove to Mom's house, the house she'd nearly lost, the house that was still hers because we'd fought back. Standing in her driveway, looking at the house where Linda and I had grown up, Mom said, "I want to sell it. Too many ghosts here." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I want to start fresh. Somewhere new, somewhere without all these memories." So that's what we did. We listed the house. We started looking at smaller places, condos near my house where Mom would be close by, where she could have a new life without the weight of the past crushing her. It felt like survival, not triumph, not victory, just survival. And maybe, I thought, that's all we get sometimes. The chance to survive the people who were supposed to love us. The strength to protect ourselves even when it costs us everything. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? Have you ever loved someone and held them accountable at the same time? It's the hardest thing I've ever done. And I'd do it again, because the alternative was letting them destroy someone I loved even more. It's been 18 months since the trial. I'm sitting in Mom's new condo right now, watching her through the window as she tends to the tomato plants on her balcony. She's 89 years old, and she's learned to garden in containers. She says it makes her feel useful. Some days are harder than others. Last week, she saw a woman at the grocery store who looked like Linda from behind, and she started crying right there in the produce section. I held her while she sobbed between the apples and oranges, and other shoppers pretended not to notice. But most days, she's okay. Better than okay, actually. She's stronger than I ever imagined she could be. The legal aftermath took months to sort through. The civil suits, the restitution orders, the appeals that Dan's lawyer filed and lost. All of it cost time and money and emotional energy we didn't have to spare. Dan is still in prison. He'll be there for another 5 years at least. I heard through my cousin Robert, the cop who helped me early on, that Dan's been in solitary twice for trying to run schemes inside the prison. Some people never learn. Linda got out 4 months ago. 18 months served, good behavior parole. She moved to Arizona to live with her daughter Emily, as far from Massachusetts as she could get while staying in the continental U.S. She sent Mom a letter when she got out, just one. It said, "I'm sorry for what I did, but I'll never forgive you for sending me to prison. Don't contact me. I don't want to hear from you ever again." Mom keeps that letter in her nightstand drawer. Sometimes I catch her reading it, tears streaming down her face, mourning the daughter she lost. Because that's the thing about betrayal like this. You don't just lose the relationship, you lose every memory too. Every good moment gets tainted by the knowledge of what came after. Mom can't look at photos of Linda's wedding without thinking about the fraud scheme. Can't remember Linda's childhood without wondering when exactly her daughter stopped seeing her as a person and started seeing her as an asset. The other victims got some restitution. Dorothy, one of the elderly women Dan had targeted, recovered about 60% of what she'd lost. The other woman, Eleanor, recovered less, about 40%. The rest of the money was gone, spent by Dan on gambling debts and failed investments. Both women thanked Mom for having the courage to press charges. "If you hadn't come forward," Dorothy told her, "we never would have either. We thought it was our fault for being stupid and trusting." Mom cried when Dorothy said that. "It's not your fault," she told her. "It's never the victim's fault." As for me, I learned some hard lessons about family, about how blood doesn't guarantee loyalty, about how sometimes the people who are supposed to love you are the ones who hurt you worst. I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was, that I could stand up to my own sister, drag our family's dysfunction into public court, and survive the fallout. My extended family is still fractured. Cousin Diane hasn't spoken to me since the trial. Uncle Frank sends Mom cards on her birthday but never calls. Aunt Susan, though, she visits every week, brings casseroles, sits with Mom, and tells stories about when they were young. The relatives who believed Linda's version of events, that she was manipulated, that I was vindictive, that this was all blown out of proportion, they'll probably never change their minds. And I've learned to be okay with that. I can't control what people believe. I can only control what I know to be true. Mom sold her house for $420,000. She used part of it to buy this condo, a 2-bedroom, top floor, with a balcony overlooking a community garden. She's 10 minutes from my house now. We have dinner together 3 times a week, sometimes more. She updated her will again. Everything goes to me, with specific provisions for charities she cares about. There's one line in the will that makes me cry every time I read it. "To my daughter Linda, I leave my forgiveness and my love, but nothing more. May she find peace." Mom still loves Linda. That's what people don't understand. You can hold someone accountable and still love them. You can protect yourself from someone and still mourn who they used to be. She asked me once, about 6 months ago, if I thought Linda had ever really loved her or if it was always about the money. "I think she loved you, Mom. I think she loved you and still chose to hurt you. People are complicated like that." That almost makes it worse, Mom said. If she didn't love me, I could understand it. But to love someone and betray them anyway? That's harder to forgive. I've been going to therapy. Twice a month, sitting in Dr. Patterson's office, unpacking the damage that this whole experience did to my ability to trust people. Some sessions, I just cry for 50 minutes. Other sessions, we talk about boundaries and grief and how you survive when your family implodes. It helps. Slowly, but it helps. Dr. Patterson asked me recently if I regretted anything about how I handled this situation. Sometimes I wonder if I should have tried harder to talk to Linda before going to the authorities, I admitted. If I'd confronted her differently, given her a chance to back out, maybe things would have ended differently. Do you really believe that? Dr. Patterson asked. I thought about the recording of Dan's phone call, the refinance scheme, the other victims, the forged documents, the systematic exploitation. No, I said finally. I don't think talking would have stopped them. I think it would have just given them time to hide the evidence better. Then you did what you had to do. I know, but knowing it doesn't make it hurt less. Mom started volunteering 3 months ago at a senior center, helping other elderly people understand their finances and recognize signs of exploitation. She's become an advocate, speaking at community events about elder abuse and how to protect yourself. She told me last week, if I can help even one person avoid what I went through, then maybe all of this wasn't for nothing. My mother, 89 years old, betrayed by her own daughter, dragged through courts and media scrutiny, has turned her pain into purpose. If that's not strength, I don't know what is. As for me, I've learned to live with the complexity of what happened. Some people see me as a hero, the devoted daughter who saved her mother. Others see me as a villain, the sister who destroyed her family. The truth, as always, is somewhere in between. I protected my mother. I held my sister accountable. I did what was right, even though it cost me almost everything, and I'd do it again. Because at the end of the day, loving someone means protecting them, even from other people you love. I'm 70 now. Mom will be 91 next month. We're planning a small party. Just me, Aunt Susan, a few friends from Mom's building. No big family gathering. Those days are over. Linda won't be there. She might not even know it's happening. And that's okay. We've learned to celebrate without her. We've learned to be a family of 2 instead of 3. Some people ask me if I think Linda will ever reach out, try to reconcile. Honestly, I don't know. Part of me hopes she does, hopes she's gotten help and understands what she did. Part of me hopes she doesn't, because I don't know if Mom could survive another betrayal. But here's what I do know. We survived. Mom and me. We survived the worst kind of betrayal, and we're still here, still standing, still finding reasons to smile. Mom's tomatoes are coming in beautifully. She makes sauce and gives jars to the neighbors. Last week, one of them, an elderly widower named Frank, asked her to dinner. She said yes. She's learning to trust again, slowly, carefully, and that, more than any guilty verdict or restitution payment, feels like victory. If you're watching this and you've been betrayed by family, I want you to know something. It's not your fault. You're not stupid for trusting. You're not weak for loving people who hurt you. And you're not alone. Elder abuse happens in every community, every income level, every family structure. The National Center on Elder Abuse estimates that 1 in 10 elderly Americans experiences some form of abuse each year. Most of it goes unreported because victims are ashamed or scared or don't want to believe their own family would hurt them. But it happens, and it's not okay. And if it's happening to you or someone you love, please get help. Talk to a doctor, a lawyer, Adult Protective Services, someone. Don't wait until it's too late. I almost waited too long. If I hadn't followed my instinct that morning, if I hadn't checked on Mom when something felt wrong, they might have succeeded. Mom might have lost everything. Trust your instincts. Document everything. And don't be afraid to get authorities involved when family crosses the line from dysfunctional to criminal. I know it's hard. I know it feels like betrayal to report your own family, but protecting yourself or protecting someone you love is never betrayal. It's survival. Mom just came in from the balcony with a bowl of tomatoes. She's smiling, that genuine smile I didn't see for months after the trial. She's healing. We both are. It's not the family I wished for, but it's the family we built from the ashes of what we lost. And it's enough. If this story resonated with you, please share it. You never know who might need to hear it. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And if you've experienced something similar, if you've had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right, know that I see you. I understand. And you're stronger than you think. Thank you for listening to my story. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other.